Hey everyone, my name is Jim and I'm one of the writers researchers here at True Crime Grapple. First, I want to thank all of you for your continued support of Dan and the show. We've shown a lot of growth over the last couple of weeks, and it's all thanks to you, the listeners. It is so important that you now take the next step and go and rate and review the show at iTunes so we can continue to grow. Then you can brag to all your friends that you were on board at the beginning and have the proof. Second, I'd like to ask all of you to go and support my other endeavor. When I'm not writing for True Crime Grapple, I'm helping people plan Disney vacations. It's an odd combination, I know, but it's a lot of fun. But I don't just do Disney trips. It's really any kind of trip you can imagine, big or small. All-inclusive beach resorts, cruises, sporting events, really just about anything. And, best of all, my travel services are completely free to my clients. So, to find out more, go to Facebook and like my page, at James Pitts, Key to the World Travel. I'm sure Dan will be kind enough to put a link in the show notes. And if you're interested in the new Star Wars lands at Disneyland or Walt Disney World, or Disney Cruise, or just about any other trip, send me a message and let me know that you heard us here on True Crime Grapple. Thank you.
And welcome back to the True Crime Grapple Show. I'm your host Dan, and this is episode 22. It's so good to be back again, and we had some really nice feedback on our latest episodes on Mark Kilroy. If you're new to us and you haven't checked them out along with the rest of our back catalogue, go back and do it. What are you waiting for? You can also get involved over at our Facebook page that we have. You can join in the conversations and the polls we have there. We'd love to have you. Just search for at True Crime Grapple on Facebook and request to join. You can also catch me on the old Twitter machine at TCG3682. Now today's show is possibly a new one for many, if not all of you. It's one I spotted about a year ago and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. So enjoy the show. And if you can, get onto Apple Podcasts or iTunes and give us a nice 5-star rating and review. That would be fantastic. And speaking of reviews, we've had a couple of nice ones recently. I'm just going to read these names out of the people who left the reviews. We've got Hawboys, we've got Clamp233, Fled and Now, Grace 2006, Long Time Listen, First Time Call, and Matt the Frog Lady. Thank you all so much for the great reviews and for helping the show out. Get your review up, and if you can take a screenshot of it and post it to either our Facebook page or our Twitter, I'll give you a shout out on the show just as I've done for these fine folks that left reviews. Lastly, make sure you hang around at the end of the show because I've got a little cool announcement for you and I want you to hear it first on here. We haven't released it on our Facebook page, but if you're not part of our Facebook page, then this is when you're going to hear the announcement at the end of the show. So make sure you hang around right to the end. Show today was written and narrated by me, Dan Kelton, and the music and editing is by BaBaBeats. So settle in, because it's time to lock your door, sit back and relax. It's true crime time. True crime time. Okay, stop and think for a moment. What's on your bucket list? For me, when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to travel. Go to a Boca Juniors versus River Plate match at La Bombonera Stadium in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and put down roots in Australia. Wouldn't you know it? I was fortunate enough to tick off them big three things I had on my list. My 3 major things I wanted to do from my list had many little what you might call subcategories attached to each thing on the list. For example, I wanted to see Boca versus River, one of the fiercest football derbies on the planet. But attached with that was so much more. There's the whole experience of the day, the lead up to the game, the travel getting into the stadium, the carnival atmosphere where you feel like the stadium is shaking, and going into the city centre afterwards to celebrate. It was the same with travelling and living in Australia. There's so many other things encapsulated within and out with the major things I wanted to do. Bucket lists are a great thing to have something to aspire to, and pretty much all of the time, those things are of positive nature. But what if you had a bucket list that had murder on it? That's exactly what Jemma Lilley had on hers. This is her sick, twisted story. Jemma Lilley was always different. Born in Lancashire, England, she grew up with a fascination with comic books. But that wasn't what made her different. Her obsession was with serial killers and horror movies. Now, you're probably listening right now and thinking, hang on a minute, I'm listening to a podcast about murder. Who knows? Maybe you've had dark thoughts, but to turn those thoughts into an obsession and then follow through on them is a whole different level. Growing up, people usually look up to their favourite sports stars, or an actor, or God forbid, your parents. Lilley, however, looked up to and adored Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger, the savage killer from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise who killed adolescents while they were in their sleep. The movie, directed by horror movie icon Wes Craven, hit the cinemas in 1984 and garnered much success even to this day. Craven was able to add to the horror genre boogeymen of Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers that preceded Freddy Krueger, but he did it, in many ways, in a totally more menacing way. See, Jason and Michael, they never spoke. They both wore masks, and they always stalked their prey while walking. Although both of them characters are iconic in horror for some varying and similar reasons, Wes Craven brought many new dimensions to his Freddy character, who was brilliantly and terrifyingly played by Robert Englund. Freddy didn't wear a mask. He would often run. He would, as stated, attack his victims in their dreams, or more accurately nightmares, and perhaps more importantly, he would talk. This brought a much more sinister difference to Freddy when comparing to Jason and Michael, because there was now a psychological terror attached, as well as the obvious terror of being cut up. These traits may well be some of the reasons Jemma Lilley idolised the character. Still, it is an odd, somewhat worrying choice of hero, idolising the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs. Her obsessions for horror and serial killers was something she didn't and perhaps couldn't hide from the outside world, with many who knew her growing up later recalling that she was socially awkward from the start. Her own stepmother even would describe Lilley as both sinister and odd. Another hobby of Lilley's was to study serial killers and their modus operandi. Again, this was an obsession. Between the ages of 11 through to 16, Lilley studied game design at Rutland's Casterton Business and Enterprise College. Despite reportedly being dyslexic, She would go on to write and release a book called Playzone under the alias Sin Demon. The book is about a killer community with the main character called SOS, who likes to torture his victims in sick, unimaginable ways. SOS being the acronym, of course, for Son of Sandkiller David Berkowitz. You can actually still buy this book on Amazon. It's worth a check out, as you get a couple of trial chapters of the book, but I'm sure like me you might struggle to get through the 3 chapters. The story lacks any real substance to it, and it is poorly written. In perhaps seeking some plaudits for her work, she would sometimes read excerpts to her stepmother, who in turn felt uncomfortable and worried about the words written by Lilley, and in particular, the lack of empathy the book's main character had for the victims. She even at one time suggested Lilley seek help to address her dark thoughts. Jemma Lilley didn't take on the advice though, and at some point told a friend that before she hit the age of 25, she wanted to take another person's life. Out of her bucket list, this was at the top of the page. Another item on her bucket list was to live in Australia, and in 2010, the then 18-year-old Lilley hopped on a plane and made her way down under after securing a 2-year working holiday visa. She soon found her way to the Western Australian city of Perth and loved it so much that she wanted to stay there on a permanent basis. The only problem was that in Australia it can be difficult to gain a permanent visa if you're not a skilled worker, which Lilley wasn't, as she took up employment in a supermarket. She did, however, find a way. A friend of hers had a brother that agreed to marry her so that she could obtain permanent residence in Australia. And so it came to be. Lilley would marry a much older Gordon Galbraith as a marriage of convenience rather than love. Galbraith was gay, but he liked Lilley enough to do this massive favour for her. The wedding itself was conducted in typical Jemma Lilley fashion, you might say, with guests encouraged to come dressed as her hero, Freddy Krueger, to which Lilley's own father obliged. Lilley's husband Gordon, who Lilley had nicknamed Gacy after killer John Wayne Gacy, then died in 2014. His death was unrelated to Lilley. Come 2016, Lilley was going about her normal routine of managing and stacking shelves late at night in a local supermarket. Through a friend named Kim Taylor, she would meet another woman named Trudi Lenon. Lennon at the time was a 42-year-old recently single mother of 3, and the pair hit it off immediately. It was to be a deadly and twisted friendship despite the 2-decade age gap between the pair. They initially bonded over a desire to lose weight together, but the more they got to know each other, they found that they had a lot more in common than they could ever imagine. Lennon was part of the local BDSM community, and as a submissive, her alias name was Corvina. Lennon schooled Lilley on her life in this community, all while stating that her fantasy and desire was indeed to serve. This brought out the darker feelings that Lilley had been suppressing all of these years, and had only been living them out in her mind as well as her writing. She soon began to share those feelings with Lennon. Hey friends of the show, sorry for a pause in the story, but just a quick reminder to let you know how you can help support the show by becoming a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/truecrimegrapple, and for $1 US a month you can get a shout out on the show with the assault tier. For $5 a month there is the murder tier, where we'll have early episodes up every so often and we'll have some bonus content coming your way. So check it out. That's patreon.com/truecrimegrapple. Any donation is greatly appreciated and welcomed. Once again, patreon.com/truecrimegrapple. Many thanks. In 2016, Lennon, along with her 3 children, moved in together with Lilley in Orillia, a suburb south of central Perth, and duly dubbed her house Elm Street. As a gift for moving in together, Lilley bought Lennon an ornamental dagger. Lilley's room read like a who's who for killers and horror memorabilia. There was Freddy Krueger images, a Chucky doll from the Child's Play movies, as well as some deeply disturbing artwork and ornamental knives proudly displayed on the walls. With the both of them getting closer and bonding, along with having much more time under the same roof, more dark fantasies were shared. Lilley took the role as dominant, and Lennon took her usual submissive role that she had been used to from her BDSM days. When they were together, they shared fantasies. When they weren't, they would message about their fantasies and urges. An example of these exchanges are as follows. Lennon: seriously, how have you been able to wait this long to take your first? I want to see this start now. You have amazing willpower. The intense feelings that build up every day and the need to release them is so strong in me. I can only imagine just how much more intense they are for you. Lilley: I've had many very close calls. Lennon: your strength amazes me. Lilley: I feel as though I cannot rest until the blood of a fresh screaming, pleading victim is gushing out and pooling on the floor. Until all the roads and streets are stained red and abandoned, and the fear in the back of everyone's minds and on the tongue of each human left standing is SOS. I cannot shift this belief that the world has become not only ready for me, but that it needs me to be ready. Lennon: the first time it will be very controlled, brutal, and SOS will be totally entranced by it. It's definitely time. I am ready. You are ready. I will fear you but respect you. I see you as my dominant. Lilley: my mind is the darkest being you will ever be laying your life in the hands of. So, they were ready. Jemma Lilley had been working up to this most of her life. The dark thoughts and fantasies were coming to the fore. With Trudi Lenon now at her side stoking the flames, that burning desire reached its maximum heat, and it was about to explode. All that was needed was a victim. At just 18 years old, Aaron Pajich Sweetman had the world ahead of him. He was a popular kid and well liked by teachers. Despite suffering from Asperger's syndrome, he was described as very happy and positive. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke, and he attended his local church with his father Keith. He also had a strong relationship with his stepmother Veronica, who doted on him. His passions were computer games and helping people. If he knew you, he'd help you. Unfortunately for Aaron, it was in his nature to trust, perhaps somewhat easily. But in this tragic case, how could he possibly have known what was in store for him? He met Trudi Lenon on a college course they were both enrolled in together, and Aaron actually became friends with one of Lennon's sons. It was some 3 weeks after Lenon and her kids had moved in with Lilley that they decided to move forward with their plan to kill, and Lenon suggested Aaron to Lilley as a perfect victim. Knowing Aaron had a kind and trusting nature, plus his friendship with her son, she was able to easily convince Lilley that they could lure Aaron to Elm Street to kill him. Aaron wasn't the biggest kid, and despite Lennon knowing she had his trust, she also knew that if anything went wrong with the plan, they could overpower him. This horrible duo started getting prepared. With Lilley's vast knowledge of serial killers, she had in her mind just what she required. The pair would then make several trips to different hardware stores, purchasing different tools and products such as bleach, cement, a circular saw, a large barrel, and a set of knives. In addition to this, they also purchased around 100 litres of hydrochloric acid, some of which they used to experiment by dissolving joints of meat in saucepans in the kitchen. On the 13th of June 2016, Trudi Lenon dropped her 3 kids off at school and then called Aaron, asking him to meet, saying she wanted his help with installing a computer game. At this time, Aaron was eating his breakfast along with Adrienne Reed, a lady he had met at church and who he boarded with. Being the helpful young man that he was, Aaron was only too happy to accept Lennon's plea for a hand, totally oblivious to what she and Lilley had in store for him. His trusting nature was about to lead him down a fateful path. But of course, he should have been able to trust Lennon. She was, after all, someone he had met on a college course. He was friends with her son. It makes all that was to come even more disturbing. Between 9 and 9:30 AM, Adrienne Reed dropped Aaron off at the Rockingham Mall, where he met with both Lennon and Lilley. CCTV footage captured the trio leaving the shopping centre by car not long afterwards. They arrived back at Lilley and Lennon's residence at around 10 AM and entered the property. From this point on, it must be mentioned that once inside the house there is some doubt as to what happened exactly. Although in the aftermath of the terrible events that were to come, investigators with Lennon's testimony were able to piece together what they believe happened. They are as follows. Once inside, Aaron was served a coffee before being led to the computer by Lennon. Once he was sat down and in a vulnerable position with his back turned to the rest of the room, Lilley entered the room, sneaking up on Aaron from behind with a wire, and she looped it over his head around his neck tightly in an attempt to garrote him. Perhaps a combination of weak wire and along with Lilley's strength and viciousness, this attempt to take Aaron's life didn't work out as planned and the wire snapped. At this point, Lennon subdued the much smaller Aaron by holding him down as Lilley went to retrieve a knife. Quickly returning and with Aaron still being held down by Lennon, Lilley plunged the knife twice into a helpless Aaron's neck before bringing it down a third time into his chest. In what sounds like no more than just a few minutes, this evil pair had succeeded in taking the innocent life of someone who was only there to help them. The garroting was a complete botch, and now having used a knife, there was blood soaking into the carpet and floorboards below. This was not the plan. Lilley wasn't the expert killer she had painted herself as in her own deranged mind. After the murder, the pair dragged the body into a ready prepared room so they could dispose of the corpse. As crime scene photos show, it is akin to a kill room, something similar to that of fictional TV serial killer Dexter. The floors were white tiled, the walls draped with blue tarpaulin. There was a homemade gurney in the corner and a small red chest that perhaps stored some of the tools required to section up a corpse. It's thought that the original preferred way to dispose of Aaron was to dismember his body and then dissolve the parts in the already purchased hydrochloric acid. But for whatever reason, the pair didn't go through with this plan. Instead, they dug a shallow grave in the back garden where they dumped the body of 18-year-old Aaron Pajich Sweetman. The next day, there was no regret between Lilley and Lennon as the pair exchanged text messages, with Lilley in particular expressing how exhilarating the whole murderous experience had made her feel. At around the same time, Aaron's parents were beside themselves with worry. Adrian Reed, Aaron's housemate, had informed them that he hadn't returned home. It was out of character for Aaron not to return home or to be in contact. He was also not returning calls or texts. Going off of this, they didn't hang about, calling it into the police and reporting him missing. A few days after the murder, Lilley and Lennon, along with Lennon's oldest son, poured cement over the patch of ground in which Aaron's body lay underneath. They then put slabs on top of the cement. Lennon's son had no idea about what horrors lay just a few feet underneath the body of his own friend Aaron. Believing that she'd gotten away with murder just a few days beforehand, Jemma Lilley reportedly boasted to a work colleague that she had killed someone recently. Meanwhile, police were now starting to believe that something sinister had indeed happened to Aaron, and with that, they started delving more into his final movements on the day of the 13th of June. After having no joy despite a public plea for help with the missing Aaron Pajich Sweetman, police started looking into his phone records in hope for some leads. They discovered that the last call that he answered was from Trudi Lenon on the date of the 13th. On the 20th, they went over to the home that Lennon and Lilley both shared to try and get answers of what had happened to Aaron. They shockingly found all that they were looking for. After a search of the property, they found dozens of knives, a bone saw, scalpels, a machete, a piece of cut-out carpet stained with what looked like to be blood, and an alphabeticalized handwritten list of torture techniques. Further investigations pointed them towards newly laid slabs in the back garden. They removed them and started digging, and not before long, they found the body of Aaron. They also found something else damning. Jemma Lilley was a motorbike enthusiast. She had previously installed 4 motion sensor cameras around the external sides of her home in order to protect her precious bikes. In viewing the footage from the day of the 13th, police confirmed that Aaron entered the house along with Lilley and Lennon at around 10 AM. At around 10:30 AM, the cameras recorded Lennon leaving the home before shortly re-entering carrying a knife in a sheath. This was to prove big for police, because while they knew Aaron had of course been there, it confirmed that he went inside with both Lennon and Lilley. Under questioning, Lilley denied killing Aaron and blamed it all on Lennon, stating that she was in fact sleeping during the time of the murder. Lennon claimed that it was Lilley that committed the murder, but that she witnessed it and then helped conceal the crime along with Lilley. With the evidence they had already, along with the CCTV from the home, police were able to put together a timeline in that they were more than confident implicated both Lennon and Lilley in the death of Aaron. On Thursday the 23rd of June, just 3 days after the discovery of Aaron's remains and the arrests of both Lennon and Lilley, the two women appeared at the local magistrates' court where they were both charged with the murder of Aaron. Both acknowledged and understood the charge of murder, although they weren't required to enter a plea at this time. No bail application was made and both were remanded in prison. Later that evening, locals held a candlelit vigil to pay respects to Aaron. Friends, family, neighbours, teachers, and even complete strangers came out in force to sign a book of condolence and lay flowers for the young man described as a kind and gentle soul. The parents of Aaron set up a GoFundMe page to raise funds to pay for the funeral costs, as both of them were retired. Within about 18 hours of the page being live, they had taken in around $8,000, which was a couple thousand more than the $6,000 target they had set. Aaron's mother, Sharon Pajich, told the Perth Now newspaper that Aaron was a loving boy with a gentle soul. Quote, "He was a very good boy and he would never have hurt anyone. He respected life and everything else. He enjoyed school." She then went on to say that he would be missed very deeply and that she always loved him. Aaron's father Keith and Aaron's stepmother Veronica described him as a lovely child and a great boy. Quote, "He was always helping us, would always come and see us, would always be there to help us when we needed help." Lilley and Lennon made another appearance at the magistrate's court via video link, in which both pleaded not guilty to the charges of murder. The court date was set to begin on October 2nd, 2017 at the Supreme Court of Western Australia. During the trial, the prosecution laid out all of the evidence to the jury. They heard the testimony from the work colleague Lilley boasted to about killing Aaron some 5 days after his murder. Lilley stuck to her story about how she was sleeping at the time, and the last time she in fact saw Aaron was sitting on the couch inside her living room. When the pair were questioned about the weapons and means of torture lists found by the police in their house, and the texts the pair exchanged leading up to and after the murder, the pair said they were simply role-playing for an up-and-coming book they were writing. The texts the court heard were pre the murder, which painted the picture of the submissive, dominant relationship between Lilley and Lennon. But there was also damning text after the murder, where Lilley sent one saying, quote, "I am seeing things I haven't seen before, and feeling things I haven't felt before. It is incredibly empowering. These images. Thank you." Lennon replied to that message, quote, "You're welcome, SOS." In further evidence, searches of Lennon's phone by police found that the day after the murder she had looked up the Wikipedia page of life imprisonment in Australia, and the same analysis of Lilley's phone found that she had googled the words "slit throat." The case went on for around 5 weeks, and the jury took less than 3 hours to come to the decision to find both Jemma Lilley and Trudi Lenon guilty of murder. On the 1st of January, while being held in Bandayoot Women's Prison, Trudi Lenon was waiting in line for medication. Another inmate, Natildre Nalina Forrest, poured around 2 litres of boiling water over Lenon. She suffered burns to between 20 and 30% of her body and spent weeks in hospital recovering. Forrest later pleaded guilty to the attack on Lennon, citing the reason of being disgusted that a mother, as Lennon is, could do such a thing to another young person. It is reported Forrest got 5 years for the attack on Lennon. Lilley, while being held awaiting sentence, had reportedly started a relationship with another killer named Melanie Atwood. Atwood had conspired to kill the father of her child and the man she had been with for 9 years, Alan Taylor. She had reportedly grown bored of her relationship with Alan and started having an affair with Robert Edhouse. Both Edhouse and Atwood were part of a far right-wing group named Aryan Nations Group. It is alleged that the pair discussed ideas on how to kill Alan Taylor, such as pushing him from a balcony and getting a gun from the black market. They would then be able to claim life insurance, which equated to about $1 million. The plan they went with was horrific. Edhouse and Atwood, along with 2 other men, stormed into Taylor's house and attacked him. It was alleged that the 3 men took turns in beating Taylor over the head with a hammer, while Atwood trashed the house to make it look like a robbery had gone wrong. After this, they all went to the cinema to watch a movie trying to establish an alibi. Atwood then went back to the house later in the day, knowing that Taylor was dead. She then placed a phony 000 call, Australia's version of 911 or Britain's 999. It was a horrendous crime, with doctors later stating Alan may have been alive for up to 5 hours after the brutal, savage beating which left his room covered wall to wall in blood. Upon learning of the relationship between Lilley and Atwood, prison authorities separated the pair, sending them to different facilities. On Wednesday the 28th of February 2018, the sentences were passed on to Lennon and Lilley as they both received life with minimum of 28 years to be served. It is one of the highest minimal terms ever handed down by a Western Australian court. In sentencing, Justice Stephen Hall described the crime as morally repugnant and then continued saying the murder was for, quote, pitiless pursuit of your own desires. You killed for your own pleasure. In April 2019, Jemma Lilley appealed against her 28-year minimum sentence on the grounds that her book, Playzone, should not have been used as evidence against her in court. Her lawyer, Simon Waters, said, quote, the book was essentially written when Miss Lilley was young, namely 16 years old. It should have been ruled as inadmissible as establishing a propensity when seeking to prove acts performed by her as an adult. He also stated that the book was among a list of propensity evidence that should not have been part of the trial, along with Lilley's collection of weapons and her obsession of serial killers. The appeal verdict is still to be decided by a panel of 3 judges, but the decision will happen sometime this year. Lilley, meanwhile, is currently serving her time at Eastern Goldfields Prison, and on the other hand, Lennon has been moved to a safer unit after the attack on her for fear she will come to more harm from the inmates. Jemma Lilley's father, Richard, who flew out for the trial, gave Australian TV show Sunday Night an interview and made a quite staggering claim. When asked by the interviewer if he asked his daughter if she did it, he said Lilley told him, quote, 100% I didn't do it. He then went on to say that with the emotion he saw in her eyes, he believed her. When the interviewer then asked him if he thought his daughter was a killer, Richard Lilley stated, quote, no, absolutely not. She hasn't got a bad bone in her body. Jemma Lilley wanted something before her 25th birthday. She wanted to take a life. It was on her bucket list. She, along with Trudi Lenon, fantasised for weeks about killing someone. In fact, with Lilley, she fantasised for years. They prepped and planned, then they committed an awful act to a young man who had his whole life ahead of him. One hopes that the appeals court sees through her lodge and both her and Lennon remain in prison for a very long time to come. A lot of time doing these shows, we'll often finish with something about the case or about the killer. But this time, we should finish this story talking about Aaron. It's a shame that this smiling kid was brutally taken from this world. By all accounts, he was liked and loved by all that knew him. It's really important to remember his qualities. Lilley and Lennon took these qualities away from us. But wherever he is right now, I like to think he's looking down with that smile of his, knowing that his legacy is not one of being a victim to a couple of self-serving sickos. His legacy will be one of helping people, making them laugh, and just being a good person. And Lord knows, we can never have too many of them around. Okay folks, that wraps up this show. Tough story to write and narrate. This is one of them stories that the more I dived into it, the more sorrow I felt because of the outcome. But let's try and finish the show on somewhat of a positive note. At the beginning of the show, I asked you to hang around to the end for an announcement. So we've now set up a True Crime Grapple voicemail service. You can now leave us a message and we'll play it at the end of each show. Please keep it brief, no longer than about 30 seconds, and of course keep it clean. Don't forget to leave your name and where you're calling from. If you're calling from the US, dial 303-468-7477. That's 303-468-7477. And if you're calling from outside the US, put a +1 in front of it. Looking forward to hearing the messages, can't wait. And looking forward to bringing you another story in a couple of weeks. Till then, I've been your host Dan, and stay safe out there.